alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Yes, it is that time again. I'm changing up my introduction because it's way too generic. It's Saturday, which means it is another episode of the Northern Nerdcast. I am the Nerdcast, Brad Davidson, and joining me, as always, is I'm not even gonna say honorary anymore, man, because like you and Clayton, you guys are the Nerdcast as well. It's like that commercial that we used to have on Q92. Hey nerds, get in, let's go for NGE. It's dangerous to go alone, take a friend. So it's too dangerous for me to go by myself. So I am taking Adam, Svenny McG along for the ride again, and we have Clayton that'll be joining us in a little bit. Adam and I just wanted to kind of follow up on the last podcast because not even a day after we did the podcast, Sony backtracked and said, hey, hold up, guys. The PS Vita store and the PS3 store are not closing anymore. The PSP store is still closing, which kind of makes sense. The PSP is older than both the other two systems. Right. So it's not that much of a loss to me. Again, we touched base on this. It's still fairly easy to find PSP stuff for decent prices, whereas Vita is still on the up and up. And PS3, like my buddy Mike has, it's like I've seen this everywhere now, but it's a four game series, but it's like Fat Princess and all these different party games all in one.
Oh, yes.
And it's like $130 to $200 now. So
wow.
it's crazy, but the stores aren't closing. I'm happy about it. I was trying to decide like, well, I can't fit 2,000 games on a library, and I wouldn't even have time. My wife would kill me if I had spent all that money on all that stuff. I'm still planning on modding the white system that I have behind me. You can sort of see it. Yeah. But what do you think that Sony backtracked just based on backlash, or do you think that they finally connected the dots that this might not be might not be a good idea?
Well, I think a few things out of there. Like one that we'd seen right from the inception was suddenly everybody on YouTube was talking about it, and again, some huge names like Metal Jesus throwing out there like, these are the games you got to get, the top 60, and then his buddy Radical Reggie doing his and everything. So I think there was probably a quick surge, and people were very quick to note and say, hey, none of these are on sale. They're still selling full price digital, which, I mean, the physical for a lot of them has gone way up, especially if you're comparing to like the limited run games. The digital would be cheaper there, but still, you're still paying 40, 50 clams to get a new game. So like you said, times 2,000, that's massive. But for better, for worse, I think people started pushing on the store, and that started getting their attention. Then there was the media backlash, of course, and some people are actually saying this was their way to kind of dance around and do something positive in the same week that everyone's talking about that CMOS battery issue with the PS4, PS5. So they think that maybe this was a way, instead of everybody, like we had a whole podcast where we just kind of, made Sony a punching bag. And again, everybody, like, despite my background, like Brad, yours is very PlayStation heavy.
Sony centric.
Yes, and that's the thing. Today we're also going to talk about some other consoles. We love all systems. We'll be very blatant if we don't, but we love most publishers, most gaming companies. Just sometimes, we can poke and say, hey, this was probably not your shining moment.
Yeah, and I mean, at the same time, like I think the other problem with the store shutting down was a lot of people were expecting not necessarily deep discounts, but hey, the Sony store is closing. They're gonna want to make some money on their games, but every single game is still full market value. Like it is crazy. And even like people say that Nintendo, like the Switch stuff, the first party games, it's true, most of them very rarely do they ever go down in price. But the Vita is like almost 10 years old now, and like there's actually a game that just came out a couple days ago. We had talked about, I can't remember the name of it, but it was this small studio that released a game, and like it was scooped up very quickly because like not a couple days ago, like last week, just before they reversed their decision, and the game sold out, and now nobody can get this game because the publisher only made so many of them, and whether more are going to come digitally or whatever. But like like they were not expecting to have the massive amount of demand for this, basically what was the last physical game for the Vita.
Right.
But yeah, I think that, like you said, Sony's like just trying to take the negative focus, and it's not just Sony. We talked about it. It's been found in the Xboxes as well. But
Yes.
again, it's not to bash any one system, but that's what it is. And I think part of the other problem too is Sony realized that people are still buying PS3s. It's not that old of a system, and like I mean, it is an old system, but you can still get the PS3 Slims that are still relatively new. You can get them still for not dirt cheap, but cheap enough.
The George
And if
Foremans.
they shut, yeah, if they shut the store down, like you said, when that CMOS battery dies, that's it.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the problem with going digital only. Like everyone's like, oh, you know, I can save a lot of space. That's great, but you have 500 digital games on like your backup drives, whatever. That's great that you have those, but if your digital only thing shuts down and your CMOS battery dies, that's it. Like you've got, not only do you have a brick system, but you have a brick storage system that you can't access anymore.
That's right. Couple of things I want to say on that one you mentioned with Xbox. So they're looking at it now and assessing that the Xbox One and possibly the Xbox series of consoles, they're saying it's not necessarily tied to the battery and the date, but when the storefront shuts down and the system cannot connect digitally, it is like a DRM, digital rights management type thing, that will suddenly disable it. And this was something that Xbox talked about when the system first came out, the Xbox One, and everybody really booed about it, saying like, hey, you know, my system can't connect to the internet every
Exactly.
day. Like, you know, especially there's certain parts of the world, parts of even, you know, definitely here in North America, that, you know, that is an issue. You don't always have the greatest internet, and if you have lag or, you know, down services and you just can't play a console sitting on your shelf, that stinks. So
Yeah.
that was one major issue there. And again, now we've seen it come across to the Xbox. So Sony's looking a little bit better this week than they were last week.
Not really, but that's here nor there. But actually, it's funny that like talking about all the fans, and we had talked about this with Days Gone, and do you know who David Jaffe is?
Name's familiar,
So
but
David Jaffe is part of Santa Monica Studios. So he was the director for God of War.
okay.
So like all these big titles. He tweeted, congratulations, Sony. Now your fans can continue not supporting the online system. And I mean, he's right, because like it's now it's like it's a double-edged sword in the sense that Sony's continuing on with the online stores. So now people don't have to feel pressured for another couple of years to actually have to buy the games. And that was the same thing with Days Gone too. They're actually, I think they're at like almost 75,000 signatures. That's still not enough for Sony really to take notice, to be like, well, that's 75,000 people. How many of those people are actually willing to pay full price for Days Gone 2? Probably maybe 40%. Like I would pay for it. I'm throwing this out there. Like, I don't know if you watch GameZub on Twitch, but he's been playing a lot of Days Gone, and it is so fun to watch him play, because the hordes of zombies come and he's like, oh, and his motorcycle's out of gas and he's just trying to run from this horde of zombies. And it's just it's fun to watch. So twitch.com/ I think it's GameZub. I'm throwing that out for him because he actually got me 3 more subs today. So just by promoting on his Twitch channel. So I'm not near where you are, but I'm slowly getting there.
No, hey, we all start somewhere. I've seen, I saw a good clip GameZub had on his YouTube channel. It was just a short clip, but it was playing through, and he's going through this like decrepit building, and all of a sudden the door just comes blowing open, and you know, exactly. Like, I love watching that stuff, man. I don't have like the, you know, the gusto to get in there myself, but I certainly love watching it. I'd sit and watch alongside someone, but I remember even just playing like the original Resident Evils, like, you know, back in the original PlayStation days, and just being like, oh man, like palms sweating, you know.
Well,
and
Yeah, and I still remember the original Resident Evil where you're going through that hallway and the dog jumps through the window.
Yeah, yeah. And you
And I
pass
mean,
through that room like 3 times, and on the fourth or whatever, it kicks in, and you're just
and
like, oh
yeah,
my
and I
gosh, like
mean nowadays, like, I mean, on like a 50, 60-inch screen, it's so stretched that
yeah,
it's not really going to scare you, but it's just the jump scares. And but I mean, like, that's another thing with the Vita that I'm actually very surprised that the PS5 hasn't jumped on with like even PlayStation Now, which, let's just be honest, PlayStation Now will never ever be Game Pass. And this is coming from a diehard Sony guy. I have Game Pass on PC, and like it 15, actually I don't even know what the number is, but there's only like 2.5 million subscribers for PS Now, compared to I want to say like it's probably 15 million, maybe even higher. Like Drew, I'll probably get fact checked by you later, but I know that the numbers for the Game Pass is like substantially higher. But the point that I'm making is the Vita and the PSP and certain games on the PS3, you could get PS1 stuff. You can't do that on the 4 and 5 for whatever reason. The PlayStation 1 just got left behind.
right,
And then there was it was announced they were closing the store for Vita and PS3. Well, obviously PS3 you can get on PlayStation Now and all that, but yeah, PS Plus. But there was no mention if they were going to carry the Vita titles over. And I mean, how, like, the graphic capabilities, it's a totally different system than what the PlayStation 1 uses to the
right.
PlayStation 5. So, and like I'm happy that it's staying, but I will admit that I'm one of the people that, now that I know the store is going to stay open, like I'm not pressured to go and download the games that I'm going to lose out on, because like as you can see behind me, I've got a lot of games that I like. I had a much bigger collection. I sold a lot of it off just because, am I ever going to play them?
Right.
Then there was this thing about disc rot, which could be an entirely different podcast. I think it's all about how you store your discs. So if
Right.
you don't have them in direct sunlight and all this stuff, you can extend the life a little bit longer. But we're getting off topic. So, but yeah, it's nice to see that Sony, like you said, did something good and reversed their decision on those two closures. Clayton will be joining us very shortly, so this works. But any final thoughts on, like, do you see this being a long-term thing, or do you see Sony next year being like, you know what, the numbers just aren't there, that's it?
Yeah, I think it's a temporary patch, like you said. Like right now, PlayStation 5's out. People love it, of course, but you're still like it's a launch console, and I mean we're still going through these current like pandemic times, etc. So there isn't like a huge library. Yeah, you can backplay your PS4, but I mean just shutting down games in general, probably anywhere, any other which way they can make game sales. I don't see why. I mean, if you want to just push everyone to buying physical through mom and pop stores and pawn shops and stuff, that doesn't seem like the best strategy. Like, why wouldn't you keep it open? I know there is an associated cost to it, and maybe they were looking at the numbers and seeing them definitely dwindling, but there was an obvious backlash there, so it's nice to see it open. One
Yeah.
final thing I wanted to say on that was, in this past week, I saw an article. I don't remember who actually published it, but um, the problem was someone is going after Apple now for some of the iTunes and some of the potential closures there. And
Epic.
basically, well, one I saw was, oh, it's not just Epic. This was actually, there's a couple lawsuits going on. So
Oh,
someone
okay.
someone was suing in saying, we own this media, and they're saying, no, you don't, you rent it. And
Mhm.
so someone else apparently has spent close to $25,000
Oh,
on a digital media, and that's music, that's movies, TV shows, etc. And they're talking about winding up some of the library there. So the person's saying like, well, what do you mean? Like, I need to be able to access this stuff.
mhm.
And Apple's saying like, no, like no reasonable person, I believe they were trying to say, believe that they were buying this stuff with the intent that they were keeping it forever.
Yeah.
And that not wasn't necessarily the case, especially when digital media first came out years ago. So you know, like at the time, everybody was starting, like, yes, we had Napster and things like that, but like when we first started and digital media was going around, everybody was adapting it. So when there was an official store kind of coming out as the iTunes store,
Yeah.
everybody thought they were buying in, and that was yours to keep. If you could upload it to an iPod or something, perfect. But to not be able to go back and download it later or anything like that, I think that's where we're coming to a full front. And so Apple made that statement, and the judge just said, no, no, let's explore this further. So at least the conversation's going to be had. Now, to what extent? And again, one person taking on Apple. Of course, Epic's going after them as well for their kind of, you know, the way they're
Drop.
running their
Yeah.
stores and everything as well. So there's different things going on here. Again, not to beat up on Apple, but it's the conversation of digital media versus physical. There's always going to be a plus minus. But you know, just to see that conversation happening, I think is a positive one, because it kind of opens up to these ideas of where do we draw the line on renting and physical. I saw a good thing YouTuber Adam Korlick talked about was the idea of the original media. And when you purchase a game, you're just purchasing like the license to
Yeah.
use the game, but the box, the cartridge, the manual, all that stuff is yours. So when you sell that, like if you sell the game to me, the fact that you, like, it's, if it's your original game that you bought from childhood and you now sell it to me, you still own the license or the right to use the
Yeah.
license. But if I can buy the cartridge off of you and have it in my possession type of thing. So it's just this, it becomes that weird gray area. But with digital, all that's stripped. It's literally just the license, and they still own all the rights to it.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and it's the same thing with Game Pass. Now, again, something really nice that they do is when the game is running near the end of its cycle in the system, or like in the pass itself, Xbox, PC give you the option to actually purchase the digital full, like you got the full game, but if you don't purchase it, it disappears from your library once it's out of the
Right.
thing. But if you pay whatever it is, like I don't know if it's heavily discounted. I haven't really explored that option much, but like Drew from Inside the Game was telling me that you can purchase the licensing to actually have it after it's left Game Pass for a fraction of the cost that it would actually cost to buy
That's
from
cool.
Steam. So that's like, and that's something that Sony is not doing with PlayStation now, is like you can download the game onto your system if you can't really stream, if you don't have a strong enough internet connection. But just like Netflix, once it's gone, you're basically just you have an icon and you have 56 gigs of space that you can't use unless you delete it, or you go out and buy the game itself. But at that point, like you've already, why would you spend more money on the game unless you loved it that much? Like me with Final
Right.
Fantasy VII, like I own the digital copy, but I paid the store. I didn't go on PlayStation Now to get it, or PlayStation Plus, like a lot of people are doing right now. So,
Right.
but yeah, so that's another that again, Game Pass could be something totally different podcast. Just there's so much about it that they do right that for whatever reason Sony says, well, that wouldn't work for us. Well, but how do you know? Like,
Right.
even you have all these like video game developers like David Jaffe, the former director of Days Gone, that they were saying like they don't understand how Sony just writes it off, like, well, that doesn't work for us. Okay,
Right.
but
Right.
why doesn't that, how does that not work? Like, I pay, like, so Xbox does an introductory 1 month for your first month is $1. That's how they get you, and
Right.
the library is massive. Like, there is so much in it, and then it goes to $14.99. But if you want Game Pass Ultimate, which again, I'm not exactly sure what the Ultimate does, but that's $28.99 a month. So I mean, if you're like reviewing games like Drew and Nate and all those guys at Inside the Game do, then that makes sense, because like maybe you have access to more games, or like you get, again, I'm just spitballing here because I don't really know, but Like
I
maybe
think
you get a game a couple days before it releases. I don't think they could actually do that, but
I think the ultimate is where they wind in the Xbox Live Gold as well,
okay.
because you can get gold separate, and then you can get the Game Pass portion as well. And with the Xbox Live Gold, of course, you get the few games that they release to keep, basically, as long as you keep Xbox Live Gold as well. The same with like PS Plus, so you can access some of those games that may or may not be contained within Game Pass itself, and just kind of expand your library on that way as well.
Makes sense. So
So,
I'm
well, it's
gonna
neat.
actually stop the recording just
Okay.
so then, because like this, we could actually use this as like another episode, really.
Yeah.
Just because like we've been going on about everything, but like continue what you were saying, because I didn't mean to rudely interrupt you.
No, by all means, by all means. No, I was going to say the one final point I just wanted to say too was previously, as mentioned last week with the Sony talk, was Sony and Netflix, and surprisingly, I don't know how they stick handled this, but the Spider-Man movies and possibly Venom and a few
Disney
others are
Plus.
going to be jumping over to Disney Plus too. Like supposedly after some of their time
Well,
with.
I think what it is too is that um at any point really Disney could say, you know what, we don't want Spider-Man in this universe anymore, and like that, like it's a cash cow for both companies.
For sure.
It just makes
100%.
sense. And I mean, maybe Sony is partnering with Disney in that sense, because you've got rumors that Game Pass is coming to the Switch, which
Yes.
Xbox and Nintendo partner together. Sony is not screwed, but it's like I still remember when the original Xbox came out, Bill Gates was with The Rock and all that, and they were talking about the Xbox, and I was like, this thing sucks. It is not going anywhere. Bill Gates should just stick to making computers. And like, I'm seriously, if and this is another rumor, if Xbox buys Square Enix by Sony, I will jump to Xbox. And it's not hopping the bandwagon. Some people may be like, oh, you're I'm not one of those, like, when it comes to console wars and stuff, I play every system. I had to choose between a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X.
Right.
I had the S pre-ordered, and Best Buy canceled it because I had pre-ordered at the same time I pre-ordered my PS5. It's two totally different systems, but they saw it as one per customer essentially. And I'm not overly bummed about it, because the Series S performs at a lower rate than the X, obviously, and it's digital only.
Yes.
So once the systems start rolling out more, I will most likely get a Series X, just because there's only a handful of games you can play cross-play with PlayStation, PC, Xbox, and one of them is being Outriders, which I've been playing on PC. GameZub plays on PS4. Drew at ITG and Nate over at ITG, they play on Xbox. My buddy Dan in Ottawa plays on PC. So there's more cross-play ability between PC and Xbox. MLB, the show, everyone's talking about it, but it's baseball. We'll see. Thanks for tuning in to the first of the two podcasts we recorded last night. I didn't mean to end it abruptly, but there was really no end point. So this is the end point per se. We continue on the next podcast, which will be released later on in the week, talking with Clayton and Adam about why the Dreamcast failed, what we've been playing. Clayton and I will also be doing a spoiler-free review on Mortal Kombat 2021. I gave it a 9. I don't know if he's going to like it as much as I did, but I will give the reasons why I gave it a 9. My credit may be shot because I liked The Last Jedi, Star Wars Episode 8, and he shredded that movie to pieces. So it'll be interesting to see where we are at both ends of the movie. And we will hopefully record that Monday, Tuesday, depending on when he sees the video. But again, if you like what you've watched and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button on the Northern Nerdcast YouTube channel. I'm on Discord at the Northern Nerdcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. all Northern Nerdcast. The only difference is on Twitter, it's Northern Nerd CST. I don't know why I had to do it that way, but it's Northern Nerdcast CST. Again, part 2 will be coming out in the next couple of days. Thank you so much for tuning in and have a great day.